Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm doing my review of WrestleMania 4. Starting off the evening with our first match of the night, it is a Battle Royal match. It was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between all competitors involved in this matchup, with their winner being Bad News Brown. Hats off to Bad News Brown for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go on to our next match of the night. It is Jim Duggan versus Ted DiBiase in the tournament, I guess semifinals, if you will, for the vacant WWE Championship. It was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Jim Duggan and Ted DiBiase, with Ted keeping the pace of the match. Ted hits a fist drop on Jim Duggan, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Ted DiBiase. Again, hats off to Ted DiBiase for getting a win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Don Morocco versus Dino Bravo. It was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Don Morocco and Dino Bravo, with Don Morocco keeping the pace of the match, with Don Morocco securing the win. Hats off to Don Morocco for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Ricky Steamboat. I thought it was a good matchup. Again, back and forth matchup between both Valentine and Steamboat, with Greg the Hammer Valentine keeping the pace of the match. But then Greg hits a roll-up on Ricky, hitting him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Greg the Hammer Valentine. A couple things I'll say about this match. Number one, this was a good matchup. And I believe Greg the Hammer Valentine ended up getting the roll-up when Ricky went through the crossbody off the top rope, and then Greg the Hammer Valentine ends up hitting a roll-up on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, allowing him to pin him for the 3. So, again, good matchup. Hats off to Greg the Hammer Valentine for getting a win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Randy Savage versus Butch Reed. Again, this was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Randy and Butch Reed, with Randy keeping the pace of the match. But Randy then hits a signature elbow drop off the top rope on Butch Reed, hitting him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Randy Savage. A couple things I'll say about this match. Number one, big fan of Randy Savage, man. Big fan of Randy Savage. There will never be another Randy Savage in professional wrestling. And Butch Reed. A couple things I'll say about Butch Reed. To me, honestly, underrated, in my honest opinion. The natural Butch Reed, I mean, fantastic wrestler, man. I mean, the guy was a unit. And, I mean, even the tag team that he was a part of years later in WCW as Doom, when he was teaming up with Farouk or Ron Simmons, I thought it was a great tag team, man. Underrated tag team for sure. And Butch Reed, again, just as a singles competitor, man, to me, underrated. Completely underrated. But hats off to Randy Savage for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is One Man Gang versus Bam Bam Bigelow. I thought it was an okay matchup, back and forth matchup between One Man Gang and Bam Bam Bigelow, with One Man Gang keeping the pace of the match. But your winner of the match, due to count out, is One Man Gang. Hats off to One Man Gang for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jake the Snake Roberts versus Rick Rude. I thought it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Jake Roberts and Rick Rude, with Jake Roberts keeping the pace of the match. But the match ultimately ends in a time limit draw. A couple things I'll say about this match as well, man. Jake Roberts, big fan of Jake the Snake Roberts. Completely underrated in my honest opinion, and quite frankly, could have been a multi-time world champion. In my honest opinion, man. I mean, the gimmick worked great. You know, him coming down to the ring with the snake, it was just great, man. Even the storylines, you know, that he would have with Randy Savage were just phenomenal. Rick Rude, completely, again, underrated, one of the best heels in the business. And to me, again, another guy that could have been a multi-time world heavyweight champion. And to me, one of the best Intercontinental champions I've ever seen. And to me, completely underrated, hands down. Rick Rude, there would never be another wrestler like Rick Rude. Now, to me, this might be, you know, be off base here with this, but I think the closest thing we had to Rick Rude in a small way is AEW's MJF. You know, when Rick Rude would come down to the ring, he would, you know, cut a promo before his match started. MJF kind of does the same thing. So it looks like MJF maybe uses a little bit of Rick Rude's kind of persona, if you will, in his pro wrestling career. But again, Rick Rude, completely underrated, as well as Jake Roberts. But I wish this match had a clear-cut winner, but unfortunately in a time-limit draw. So, moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the Ultimate Warrior versus Hercules. I thought this was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Warrior and Hercules, with Warrior keeping the pace of the match, with Warrior securing the win. Hats off to the Ultimate Warrior for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. Again, it was an okay matchup, back and forth matchup between Hogan and Andre, with Hogan keeping the pace of the match, but the match ends up ending in a double disqualification. A couple things I'll say about this match is, number one, no matter how many times Hogan and Andre would have wrestled, it never would have had the same significance, if you will, of the match they had at WrestleMania 3. They could, no matter what they would have done, it never would have topped that match. That match alone will be synonymous in pro wrestling, and honestly, it made Hulk Hogan who Hulk Hogan is today. Another thing, too, is the match ending in a double disqualification. I wish we kind of got a clear winner in this matchup, because, again, it's Hogan and Andre, one of the biggest rivals in professional wrestling. It would have been great to see either Andre or Hogan get the win in this matchup. But, again, this was a part of that tournament for WrestleMania 4 for the vacant, at that time, vacant WWE Championship. So, again, kind of just wish that either Hogan or Andre secured a win, but unfortunately ended up match ending in a double disqualification. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Ted DiBiase versus Don Morocco. Again, another match for the WWE Championship Tournament. Again, it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both DiBiase and Don Morocco, with Don Morocco keeping the pace of the match. Ted DiBiase then throws Don into the ropes, hitting him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Ted DiBiase. Again, hats off to Ted DiBiase for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Randy Savage. Again, I thought it was a decent matchup, back and forth matchup between both Greg the Hammer Valentine and Randy Savage, with Randy Savage keeping the pace of the match. But Randy ultimately hits a roll-up on Greg the Hammer Valentine, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match and moving on in the tournament is Randy Savage. Hats off to Randy Savage for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Brutus the Barber versus Honky Tonk for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Again, it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Barber and Honky Tonk, but your winner of the match by disqualification is Brutus the Barber. Hats off to Brutus the Barber for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the Islanders and Bobby Heenan versus the British Bulldogs and Koko Beware. I thought it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Islanders keeping the pace of the match, with the Islanders and Bobby Heenan securing the win. Hats off to the Islanders and Bobby Heenan for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Randy Savage versus One Man Gang. Again, I thought it was an okay matchup, back and forth matchup between both Randy Savage and One Man Gang, with Randy keeping the pace of the match. But Randy ultimately gets the win by disqualification. Hats off to Randy Savage for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Demolition versus Strikeforce for the WWE Tag Team Championships. I thought this was a really great matchup, back and forth matchup between both Demolition and Strikeforce, with Demolition keeping the pace. And Demolition ultimately get the win, and at that time become the new WWE Tag Team Champions. Hats off to Demolition for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of WrestleMania 4. It is Ted DiBiase versus Randy Savage for the vacant WWE Championship. I thought this was a great matchup, back and forth matchup between both DiBiase and Randy Savage, with Randy keeping the pace of the match. Hogan is here. He ends up helping out Randy Savage in this matchup, with Randy hitting an elbow drop off the top rope on DiBiase, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match, and at that time new WWE Champion, is Randy Savage. Hats off to Randy Savage for getting the win in this matchup. But as far as WrestleMania 4, man, I always give these WrestleManias a rating from 1 out of 10. I'm going to give WrestleMania 4 a solid 8, 8.5, man, because number one, I'm a big fan of Randy Savage, and we had never seen another tournament like this for WrestleMania for the WWE Championship, and it just made Randy Savage's career, it just made his career more better. Maybe better is not the word, but elevated his career to what we all know what Randy Savage is all about. And for him having a phenomenal career in professional wrestling, man, this WrestleMania 4, was synonymous with Randy Savage's career, hands down. So I'm going to have to give WrestleMania 4 8, maybe 8.5 at best. But this is my review of WrestleMania 4. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classy. Peace.